We're shifting gears now into how to select the right franchise, right? So it's like, yeah, I am going into franchising like you've done multiple times, Joe. So you've answered yes to that multiple times and you might do it again, maybe not. But so you're like, okay, at least franchising is a possibility for you.
Yes.
Now it's what brand out of the 4,000-ish brands out there should I pick?
And I think that's when you start looking at them. You got to pick your sort of criteria, why you're going to do it, and understanding when you're going through the validation calls, why things are happening. Like for instance, one of the things I learned about is whenever I talk to a franchise, number one charge, you've got your two main charges, your franchise fee and your royalty. And every franchise I talk to, number one question on the call with them, the franchisor during the discovery calls is, what do I get for my royalty? And can't tell you the number of times that someone did not give me this answer. Actually, I can. It's like 0 to 2.
So your question is, franchisor, what do I get for my royalty?
What do I get for my royalty? And what they always say is,
hold on, before you get into that, what are you really looking for in that question? Like, what's the real question that you have? Or maybe you want to tell me that later because of where you're going with this.
Well, where I'm going with this is, why am I joining this franchisor? Because I can run it. We can all run businesses on our own. So why am I paying the royalty? Or like one of the things I tell them, because this is straight off of the top line of the business. You have to realize that it's incredibly expensive. Before you've been profitable, you're paying to the franchisor. So you've got to make sure you have the fat in the business that that the royalty is going to be worth, the juice is worth the squeeze, right? So you ask a franchisor that question, almost all of them will tell you it's the brand. It's the brand, the brand, the brand. And I got some news for you. Brands are incredibly valuable, but when you're a franchisee, the brand isn't really what's valued. It's the operations, it's the business, it's other underlying things that create the brand value. I discovered was network value. Like, do we become better because there are more units? Now, you become better when you have more units because the brand gets known, which, there are a couple out there like that, McDonald's, the big ones. There's brand value in that, and they do national branding. But the other one is, when I open one unit, I open another one next to it. Is there a network value? Do they feed off of each other? Or do I get a benefit running my unit because there's a unit in California? And that can be brand value, but a lot of times some businesses, it's like shared office space. If you get into the shared office space business, the reason I can get a benefit in my unit from the network value is I open one up in Boston. Someone who's visiting that's a member or a partner in the Los Angeles location comes to Boston and they can visit my location and I generate revenue off of them. So it's not the brand that creates the value. It's the network aspect that we have a revenue sharing concept across our units. And there's value. So the more units that you get, the more valuable that network value becomes. What else are you getting for your royalty? In food services, you're getting the menu. In other businesses, you're getting programming. In educational businesses, you're getting programming. In the gym business, you could be getting the programming. But if you're or in the fitness business, but if you're in the gym business, you're not getting programming because there is no programming. So what are you getting for your royalty? And it's understanding and driving out, what's the value that I'm going to get this? Because at the end of time, your franchise agreement is going to expire. And this is the way I always rephrase it to every one of the franchisors, because when they respond with a brand, I'm like, okay, so after 10 years, when my franchise license expires, why will I renew it? Why will I continue to pay you the 4, 5, 6, 10% of my revenue to you? What am I getting for this? Because I've seen franchises where as soon as their license expires, they take off the sign and they go private label because they've already got the customers and they've already got the local exposure. So that indicates that the franchisor wasn't creating value for the franchisee on a running basis. It was merely startup value.
Would you have been able to sell one of your brands that you were a franchisee of? Would you have been able to sell it if it wasn't in that franchise? Or if you would have sold it, would you have been able to sell it for as much if it was a mom and pop versus a franchise?
No, I would not have been able to sell for the same value. That was the value.
That's value.
And the two reasons I had value was they gave me programming and there was network value. It wasn't just the brand ended up having a great name, but that network value I discovered was really valuable, which is the irony of that network value was a lot of owners thought of that as a cost. because whenever their members went someplace else, they thought they were losing money. I'm like, no, dude, it's worth it because you have twice as many members as you would in any other segment like this because they can go someplace else and they stay long. So absolutely, it was valuable because I was in that franchise and it was the structure that they
that's real
had.
value.
That was real value.
That's real value, says Joe. But that's what franchisors need to be thinking about is it's also value for the buyer of that particular brand of yours as well, because they were able to buy yours, roll that up into a bigger thing to make it worth even more. And later today, we have a mastermind coming up with David Shuck, who's rolled up a lot of Club Pilates. He's into 2 other brands now, and they are, he wouldn't be able to do what he's doing if they weren't in a franchise system. So that's real value. Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.